Hello everyone and welcome back to Shooting the Catfish development vlog series. For those who don't know, Shooting the Catfish is it's a turn-based comedy RPG. I'm making an RPG Maker MV. Sorry about the lack of a video last week. I was doing crazy hours freelance, working like 8 a.m. till 9 p.m. every day. I didn't get a day off. It was 15 days straight I was working those sort of hours, so I didn't get to touch Shooting the Catfish at all, or anything else for that matter, and I need an invoice for those times. That's time spent on the last video. But anyway, my goals for this week on the project. Today I'm going to be doing NPC dialogue and eventing for the town for episode 4, and then tomorrow I will start work on the actual dungeon. So tomorrow I'll be doing enemy battlers, day after the enemy sprites for the overworld, Thursday putting those sprites into those battlers into troops and then setting up their movesets and putting them around in the dungeon, and then Friday I'll be eventing the actual dungeon and then editing this devlog because it's, you know, the holidays and I want to get things done and spend time with the family. So that's my goal for the week. Let's get into it and make the magic happen. Good afternoon, it is lunchtime and I've already achieved everything I wanted to get done today, which is good because it means I can watch a movie and relax a little bit, which is something I haven't done in a couple of weeks. But anyway, yes, so this town, as you can tell, is quite small and it's quite dense. I got a lot of NPCs here everywhere, including this guy who's a son from a character in Flatwoods, as well as Lime here, who's the brother of a character in Flatwoods. And if we enter the game itself, we can now also enter all of the buildings and all of that stuff, and read some jokes. Where's the mango house? Jokes like this one: if you don't appreciate fruit puns, you need to let that man go. Ha! Quality sentence. Anyway, yeah, conversations with fruit, which aren't really all that, you know, insightful. If it's clear and yellow, you got juice there, fella. If it's tangy and brown, you're inside of town. Every good game has full of Simpsons references. What I haven't added in yet is there's going to be a gate here, and you'll get the key off one of the NPCs, and you'll go take that up to the dungeon after you've got your gun from Gurkman. So I still need to program that, but otherwise, the town of Flatwoods itself is pretty much completely done now, which is awesome. So yeah, all that's left is to get that last piece of programming in there. So that's cool. Tomorrow I can start work on the dungeon, and I'll come back and add in this last element of the town at the once the dungeon's done and I've decided how exactly I want to handle it. So that's going to be it for today. Good morning, it is Wednesday and it is also Christmas Day. I did a bunch of work yesterday, but I didn't get to talk about it because a big thunderstorm came over and it was raining and thundering and it's not great recording conditions. But yeah, I spent my Christmas Eve working on these character sprites because how else are you going to spend Christmas Eve? So, like I said in the previous episode, this part of the game is a bit of a sequel to my game Flatwoods, and so a lot of the enemies in this zone are based on the designs of the Flatwood monster. We've got this little guy here who's kind of like just the head of the monster on its own, and then you've also got this thing here called a tube cock, which is kind of like the bottom of the Flatwood monster's body, because in my game Flatwoods there was a farm full of chickens, so it makes sense for those chickens to have moved into the tubes. I guess they're tubes, but we've also got the floater, which is kind of like the head again, but it can float. We got the moo, which is basically a cow that's been, I guess, modified by the aliens. But it's also flying around, and I like the fact that he's got his udder hanging out. I thought that was a fun touch. The nutter is just an acorn, but my friend John Payne designed this guy years and years and years ago for a different game, and he didn't get used. So I thought I'd bring him back here. You know, it's a swamp, there are trees, it makes sense for there to be acorns. And then the second half of the enemies in this zone are going to be kind of off to one side, and that ties into the optional boss fight for the area. But they're all parody enemies of the enemies in Space Funeral, which doesn't really make sense because that game's already quite funny. But we've got a swamp shark here, we've got a bloodhound, a deadhead crab, which is basically just like a skull crab. And then there's the boss for the area, this little girl wearing the Flatwoods helmet. Ties into a game that was cancelled that I was working on. Maybe I'll still make it someday, but I don't know. We'll see. And then there's also the optional fights for this area, who is Philip from Space Funeral. So today I'm going to be making character sprites for all of these for the overworld. You know, I always enjoy doing that, so let's get into it. Good evening, it's 8:30 on Christmas Day. I've Had a bit of a day. I did these 4 characters this morning. The little individual little head guy, the little flying head, the flying cow, who I think in combat will just be like a stronger version of flying head, or maybe it'll be a weaker version, I'm not sure. And the nutter. So I did that, and then I went to the beach and I ended up tripping over and kicking off my toenail, which I do have photos of, but I'm not going to share them because that's not what the show's about. But anyway, I went and saw family and that because, you know, Christmas Day, and everyone's in town. And I came home and I tried to finish these up. So here's the cock tube, the last of the Flatwoods reference enemies, and then we have these 3 over here who are all references, of course, to Space Funeral, my favorite RPG Maker game of all time. But the enemy sprite for the Swamp Shark, which of course you'll see the whole thing when he's not trawling through the ground. The Bloodhound and the Skull Crab, I think I call it Deadhead or Deadhead Crab or something like that. This guy was actually really difficult to make work. So was the dog from the front and back. From the side he was alright. He has this kind of really janky walk that I'm looking forward to seeing in engine, but this guy was definitely the most difficult. And then we have the 2 boss sprites. So the boss is, as stated earlier, a little girl, because of course it is, because if you've got to have a bit of a horror theme, very important to play up that trope of the creepy little girl. And then of course the optional boss fight with Philip from Space Funeral, and I have tried my best to replicate the poses from the original game, these ones here specifically, although his walk's a little bit different, but I've tried my best to replicate them in my style in a way that's visually obvious but not too much of like, oh, I don't want to rip off the Catamite's work, because I want to praise his work through my game. So made with reverence and love. So that's going to be it for today. I'm going to go to bed, and then tomorrow we're going to start putting these guys into the game, which should be a lot of fun. Good afternoon, it is Thursday and I have been a busy boy today, working on, well, quite a few elements of this particular dungeon, so let's get into it. So first of all, I set up the enemies for this dungeon, so you can see all of the different enemy guys here in the enemies menu. I'll probably play around with their stats a little bit more once I'm playtesting the actual combat, which will be later on towards the end of the game where I start balancing, because I'm kind of just doing basic enemy stuff at the moment where I've got my characters level 99, so when I'm laying things in I can test them quickly by just plowing through everything. So balancing the enemies will come at the end of the game, whereas originally with the rest of the game I actually, because I was doing it 1 episode at a time for release, I was balancing the game as I went, but that's not the case anymore. But anyway, all the enemies are in there. I've got the troops in there. Something I added, which wasn't there originally actually, is this character here, the Swamp Bin Chicken, which I can't zoom in on unfortunately, but basically he's just a regular bin chicken, but he's holding a banjo. That's how you know he's from the swamp, because of the south. So anyway, those guys are in there. I've got the skills in there as well. Something that's interesting is Philip from Space Funeral is the first enemy I've put into the game that has skills that actually have specific effects, such as buffs and things, and that's something that I don't know why I hadn't really messed around with it up until now. When I'm balancing the game, that is also something I will be doing, is adding in buffs and things to make the combat a little bit more interesting, because at the moment it's very flat. So I did that, and last of all the enemy placements are in for the particular dungeon, but I thought I'd talk about something other than enemy placements, because I don't really have a rule for enemy placements. I use bottlenecks a lot, but I also have some roaming enemies that just kind of get around and do their own thing. So I use a mix of both of those. Obviously all the enemies are on the screen. Something I will point out though is this door here. So this key here is the big key that allows you to enter the boss room, which is right here. Anyway, so you need the boss key in order to get through, or the big key to get through this door. And in order to get there, you have to travel here and then up and around and get some keys and things, and then back through and then back down, and then you can get the key here and leave through this door here, which if the player is facing up, which you would be because you start down in the bottom left corner, the door doesn't open, and it says doesn't open from this side. If you're facing down, it'll open. So that is a bit of a railroad. I guess it is railroading players. It guides them around there. And the way, this isn't something I've seen in too many 2D RPGs, but I got the idea from Dark Souls. Dark Souls does this a lot, where there'll be a door that you can only open from one side, which logically doesn't make a ton of sense. but mechanically it's a good way of kind of having a door that doesn't require a key but can still only be accessed after a certain point. The rest of the dungeon, because I've got these doors here which also require keys, these are mainly going to be blocking off items and gear and that sort of thing. So anyway, that's just like a little bit of a design choice there. There's also one of those doors there, you unlock it from coming around that side, although it doesn't really mean anything. Oh yes it does, because you unlock this from that side because that one does require a key. So you need at least one key to get into this space here. Anyway, that's my little level design tidbit for you there. If you're interested in having people having a bit of an open space but still not being able to access it from every direction, or opening up shortcuts, doors that open one particular direction is a pretty good way to go in my opinion. Good morning, it is Saturday, and sorry about not having a recording yesterday. I was pretty exhausted by the time I finished, but yesterday, so I got the Patreon updated for the first time in 2 weeks because I was very busy doing work. So if you want to have a proper look at the different character sprites for the some of the enemies, that's the place to go check it out, as well as a bit of a write-up, although it's not as detailed as this video is. So I did that yesterday, but on top of that, I also finished the Flatwoods Swamp Dungeon. So as you can see now, I have garbage bins, obviously some mimics, as is the case throughout the rest of the game, as well as, you know, treasure chests with new armor. There are areas that are locked off by, you need keys in order to get them, so I've got some of that biz going on. We've got an option, a mandatory boss fight here. Our good friend, the Biceps, who wasn't in episode 3, he's back again, the second last encounter with him in the game, and he doesn't show up there until after you've defeated the boss in here. I made the conscious decision to put a healing station in here, because normally after the boss of these dungeons I put a teleport that takes you back to town. This one particular occasion I haven't done that, and that's because it's a very short walk from the boss fight to town, but also so I could have that surprise boss fight in there for players who don't watch these videos. So all of that's in. The optional fight fully works. Also, after you defeat the boss when you go to town and talk to Lime here, you can have another conversation with him and he'll give you the funeral gate key. So I was wondering how to make sure people knew to go back to him to talk to him after you've defeated the boss, and I just added in this little bit of dialogue down here. Welcome, tell me about your adventure in the swamp when you're done. I would love to hear about it. Hopefully that lets people, like, if they can remember that, they'll go back there and talk to him after they beat the boss, but we'll see. So episode 4, for the most part, is finished. So today I'm going to be working on creating the demo and uploading that for episode 4, my December update for my $5 patrons. So it's just going to be the town of Flatwoods here, and you'll be able to talk to everyone, and that's all you'll be able to do, but, you know, that's just the sort of stuff I like to release. I'll also be editing this week's devlog, which I normally do on a Friday, but I'm doing it today instead, mixing things up. Because yeah, yesterday when I finished, I was exhausted. So yeah, that's going to be it for this week. As always, I would like to thank my $5 patrons, Cortop Dev and Lone Wolf 1234, and I would like to thank all my other patrons as well for your support. And I hope you will join me next week as we get started on episode 5, which, to give you a little bit of a hint, is was originally used for the demo of the game that was released over a year ago. So I will be redoing all of this and the tutorial space, and I'll even, to show the age of some of these areas, this one was still in color, but if you go to the last part of the dungeon, it still has the original Game Boy aesthetic from 2 years ago. So that's how long ago these maps were created. They're quite old. So I've got a lot of reworking to do because episode 5 is just old dungeon, all day baby. But anyway, that's a story for next week to get into. So I hope you join me for that, and have yourselves a great holiday and a happy new year. Peace out and have a good one.